Welcome into the Pigskin Preview presented by PrizePicks. October 12th, a date it's been circled on calendars of college football fans for months. And hey, it's finally here. And we've got a jam-packed slate to get to. I'm excited. I'm fired up. I was really lucky. There's a lot that I'm probably going to play, but it was hard for me to just decide which ones to throw in here. That's the kind of weekend I think it's going to be for me.
Yeah, I think if you're into betting big games, there's obviously value there, or there's excitement there. But to me,
Opportunity.
I don't know if there's a lot of value when we get to these big team spreads. Like these are harder games, I think, to pick. Because you're a really good team's playing a really good team, so those numbers are small, the margins are small, and all that, and where you kind of go in that range. But definitely from a card standpoint, I mean, it's really exciting. There's a lot of good games. Even though, Nick, I think this weekend feels almost a little bit, I'm not going to say underwhelming to the expectations from what it was in the preseason. Yeah. Like Red River, even though it's a top 25 matchup, to me, that's lost a ton of luster. Oklahoma is not a top 25 team. They still are in the rankings, but they are not a top 25 football team. And then USC has lost a couple games now in Big Ten play. That game's lost a little bit of a shine, that Penn State USC game. I'm fascinated by a couple games in the SEC, like Ole Miss LSU. Again, I think Ole Miss plays in the most fascinating game this weekend to me, because it's almost like that game feels like a true playoff eliminator. I know some people, you can call a lot of these games playoff elimination games, but that one feels like the team that loses that one is probably not going to get to the playoff. Yeah. But the team that wins that one, I think, has a great shot to get to the playoff. So that's fascinating. Also, Alabama, South Carolina, I think, is pretty interesting.
Quick question to you about the Ole Miss LSU game. Can you name the head coach of the last Ole Miss win at Death Valley?
I can, because I heard it on a podcast this week. That would be Houston Nutt.
Yeah,
2008.
That I don't know if I would have gotten that. That's you gotta go way back to get to that day, and it makes sense that it was Houston Nutt, though, a man that truly lived up to his name. That's one of mine. I want to play the over, but I need to see if Trey Harris is going to play, because that completely changes things. I believe he was questionable on the Wednesday night availability report, so that's it's a big deal. Their best player is there or not.
And in that game last year, I remember that like the live total got up to like 100 and something.
Yeah.
And I even live bet it. I was like, it's 100.5. I got to bet this under. Like, this game is not going to go this high. And it did. And so that is going to be an interesting kind of matchup, just because where those two programs are, the expectations. Ole Miss, very much like they're going into that venue and they're a ghost there. Like,
yeah,
I've compared it Tennessee to Kentucky is kind of what LSU is to Ole Miss a little bit, especially in that venue, and so that's a huge game for them. And it's a game they've had circled.
Maybe more similarly to A&M Arkansas, where Arkansas is just like, can we get it out of Jerry World, please? Because this stupid dome, we just keep stubbing our toe here every single time. But it's point well taken. Or Kentucky at Mississippi State, where it took them, a dozen years to finally get one of those wins at Davis Wade Stadium. They finally got one last year.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Like Tennessee, Florida, that's obviously lost some luster with what's happened with both these teams, I think, last couple of weeks. But that's another one. It's kind of inverse. Tennessee is the one dealing with the ghost. And if that game's tight, they're going to hear it in the stands.
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of nervous energy in there if Florida's able to hang around. So that's another one that I think is very interesting.
Especially if that offense is struggling. This is the spoils of war from Ole Miss. This is a mayonnaise hat. It's got mayonnaise all over it. Little Duke's Mayo from outside Vaught Hemingway Stadium. So when I win my free souvenirs, by God, I'm going to show them off. And here's the great thing too, Luckett. If you download the PrizePicks app and you put in promo code KSR, you're going to get free money. Not technically free. So how it works, you play $5, you're going to get $50 in your account when you use promo code KSR. Terms will apply. But if you haven't tried out PrizePicks before, do it now. It's a great way to pick a few squares, and you just pick more or less. You string them together, and you win big. I've been playing a decent amount lately, and I've been winning big because even just 3 picks, like what I've got together for Thursday Night Football, I love using them for standalone NFL games. It's my go-to now. I don't even like it. It's just my favorite. I don't know what it is about it. And in the NFL, it's just less to monitor. Or like college football, you've got a lot of squares to choose from. So tonight, I've got 3 picks. Jackson Smith and Ajigba over 39.5 receiving yards. Kenneth Walker, the running back, over 22.5 receiving yards. More than, yes. And Jordan Mason, the 49ers running back, more than 18 rushing attempts. So San Francisco, they're going to run the damn ball. That will pay 4.5, give or take, on PrizePicks. So if you place your $5 wager, it's to win 22.5, and then you'll get $50 in your PrizePicks account to play with when you use promo code KSR. Play $5, get $50 in your account. Terms apply. Big fan of PrizePicks, especially for these Thursday night NFL games. And I got to admit, Luckett, those aren't my picks. This dude I've been following, he's been hot with the standalone single game parlays. So we got one Monday night. We're racking them up. We're going to steal his picks. We're going to parlay them. We're going to just use them differently, wheel them around in PrizePicks. You got lots of different options there. So please check out PrizePicks when you're playing around. College football, NFL, Major League Baseball playoffs happening. I'm not a big baseball guy. I've watched some baseball games this week. I like it. Watched Shohei Ohtani hit the baseball last night. He's a big dude.
I have not watched one pitch of postseason baseball.
That was my first time ever seeing a Shohei Ohtani at bat. And it was only because I was feeding a baby at 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, let's watch some baseball. Did you watch any of the midweek Cuse action?
I didn't get to see anything last night. I know it was a blowout, but I did get to watch a little bit of Liberty FIU.
Overtime.
It was overtime. So that was a sneaky good game, really.
Yeah.
And then Liberty's going to go undefeated again. And that's good in that conference. I mean, it's just a awful conference, but I like that they get on TV on Tuesday and Wednesdays in October. I think that's smart.
And we got the tops.
Check out
with their big red helmets tonight too. So that's a great way to get things started. Let's get started with some of our picks, and whatever we don't pick, we can touch on afterwards. And so, Luckett, you're riding a nice little heater now.
5-1 last 2 weeks.
Pretty good. I'm rocking with the old 7-Eleven gas station. Not great, but we're scratching, we're clawing, we're getting back. That Ole Miss money on Kentucky money line against Ole Miss. It did good getting us back more towards even on the year. But let's go to our first game. I think I'm up first. I think Steven has to where I'm up first. And this is the biggest game of the day. It's one we expected going into the year that's still going to live up to the hype. Ohio State going out to Autzen Stadium, the house that Rich Brooks built to take on Oregon. And part of this game for me, Luckett, is I just don't think we're going to get Ohio State laying 3 at all this year, or giving 3, excuse me. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think they're the best team in the country. I know they're untested to this point. Michigan State is the one team really with the pulse that they've played. And Oregon did the same. Oregon left the back door open for a cover late Friday night, a late field goal there. Shout out to Jonathan Smith for knowing the number and playing to it. I also realized that Oregon started slow, and that Dylan Gabriel has some big game experience. And you look at what's hurt Oregon this year. Ashton Genty did a lot to him. I think Ohio State's running game can do a lot to them. They have the big playmakers out on the edges too for Will Howard. Just throw it up and let Igbuka or Jeremiah Smith make the big plays. I love that Igbuka, by the way, too, is just a consummate badass. He's like one of the best receivers in college football, but nobody ever talks about him because he's been second fiddle to Marvin Harrison and Jr. and Jeremiah Smith, these top 5 draft picks for his entire career. Just to me, Ohio State has so many weapons in so many different ways. Like, whereas, and they can win the game in different ways too. So I think you got to have Dylan Gabriel play hero ball to win this if you're Oregon, and that's asking a bit much. So I'm going with Ohio State here. I just think they have so much firepower, and I can't resist the urge to bet them when I'm only getting a -3.
I'm not gonna lie, Ohio State, that being like a 7-3, 7-6 game into the third quarter last week is a little. I do worry a little bit about that. I do like the side because Chip Kelly is familiar with Oregon from his time in the Pac-12.
Well, revenge game.
Not well. I mean, he's coached against Oregon like 3 times because he was at UCLA.
That's true. Yeah.
So I like that aspect of it. But I feel like Ryan Day's been in these games where it's -3, -3.5. And I even kind of looked it up today, and like he doesn't cover many of them. He wins a lot of them by like 1. or he wins like it's a -4 and he wins by 3. Like Notre Dame was a big game last year. They won early. Mm-hmm. I think this is probably going to play out maybe somewhat similar to that. I think this is going to be a close game down to the wire. I haven't seen just total juggernaut when I kind of the little bit I've watched of Ohio State and a little bit I've dug into their kind of their statistical profile. I don't really see juggernaut with them. So I definitely could see a low-scoring game. I will say this. I think this is a game you probably run Will Howard. So if you're looking for a PrizePicks square or you're looking at your betting app and you're wanting to dabble in some props, his rushing yards is something I think that over to look at.
The other thing too, because there are some stats floating around about Ryan Day as a favorite or just really against top 10 opponents as of late hasn't been good. Those games have just all been against Michigan. So Oregon and Michigan, there's no boogeyman here. And I know it's going to be a raucous environment. I trust Ohio State a little bit more. I'm gonna go with the talent, and especially I didn't even mention the defense, but like Caleb Downs, those guys on the edges, like they got some studs over there.
Yeah, Rose Bowl 2021 season -4, they won by 3. Cotton Bowl last year -4, they lost outright. Notre Dame -3, won by 3 last year. Penn State -4, won by 8. So there's a cover there. So there's just been a lot of those when I kind of dug into some of these recent close game lines for Day. So again, I think Ohio State's probably the right side, but I do think that game's going to come down to the wire.
That's a 7:30 kickoff on NBC. Big primetime game. There's a lot of big primetime games. This is one of those where kind of wish Cats and Vandy were a nooner. There's a lot of good ones out there. Luckett, who's your first play this week?
Yeah, another big game. Red River. Seems like I'm always got a side on this one. I'm a little bit hesitant here because I pulled up the recent history. You can do that at Wikipedia, Vegas Insider, whatever your website of choice. All these games are
crazy shootouts.
38 to 35. But I'm taking the under here. Nick, Oklahoma's offense stinks.
Yep. Very bad.
It stinks. It's bad. Their defense is really good. But Texas has a pretty good defense to this point. And Texas has not been routing teams. I could see this game playing out very similar to what happened against Michigan. Texas jumps out to the early lead, but Michigan's defense is good enough to kind of get some stops in the game, but the offense just labors throughout. Ends up, I think it was 31-12. 2 years ago, when Oklahoma entered this game with a very bad offensive situation on the third-string quarterback, they lost 49-0. So even that would be an under. I like the under process here. Oklahoma defense, Texas defense too. I think top 15 units. Oklahoma's offense is really bad. Texas's offense is really good, but I think there's maybe some rust factor here with Quinn Ewers as well that could come into play. So I like the under here. I'm kind of bucking the trend in Red River, but I like the under here at the Cotton Bowl, under 50.5.
Take the under in the Red River at your own peril.
Yeah,
but
it just all the signs are pointing to it, in my opinion.
Especially with Ewers coming back from injury, like it's high profile game. That place gonna be juiced up. So yeah, I don't necessarily hate it. The total right now I'm seeing is 50.5.
Yep, that's what I got. And again, defensive score is going to be huge here. If one of those hit, like that's the only way I see Oklahoma scoring more than like 14 or 17 points.
Right.
I think 17 might even be a stretch for this offense. So as long as we stay away from that, I feel good about that under hitting Texas, Oklahoma.
For my second choice, I'm not picking a big game. I'm actually picking a game that you probably didn't even know was happening, and that is a Brett Bielema revenge spot. His old defense coordinator, Ryan Walters, is at Purdue, and he stinks. The wheels have completely fallen off. They're rolling down the street. They're nowhere to be found. You've got players decommitting, players, quote-unquote, redshirting. He's fired his offensive coordinator. Things are really bad in West Lafayette. And apparently his exit didn't really make the head coach of the team from Champaign too happy. So I think Illinois is going to come out and try to just beat the absolute brakes off of them. I'm disappointed that I didn't jump on this earlier. It opened at 17.5. It's up to 22.5. But look at the scores that Purdue's given up this year. I mean, they are getting absolutely lit up.
They're bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they are in a new level of bad. And it's to the point, especially if you've got a team with any sort of pulse who has a reason to want to beat the crap out of them. 52-6. They gave up 38. They gave up 28 to Nebraska. 66-7. They've been bad. They've been really bad. We're going to try to take advantage of it here. So give me Illinois and the Fighting Luke Altminers minus 22.5 over Purdue.
Yeah, the one thing to point out, Illinois has been a much better dog under Bielema than a favorite. 5-11 ATS is a home favorite. Under the big guy, 1-1 this year. So that would be my one worry. But again, Purdue is so bad. And Ryan Walters, you mentioned that, Nick. He kind of had a weird how he left Missouri, too, for Illinois. So
it's almost like we could have seen it coming.
Yeah.
Look at who's your second pick?
Yeah, staying in the Big Ten, but out in Los Angeles.
Ooh, high-profile game.
Penn State at USC, CBS on the call. Trojans, plus 4.5 here. This was actually at 5.5. Yesterday it's dropped. I'm probably going to be on this money line here, Nick. Now, I'm bucking against some trends here. Penn State has covered 8 straight as a road favorite. But I like USC in this spot. 2 losses already, backed against the wall. Penn State has been at home since beating West Virginia in week 1. They really didn't look too good to me against Illinois or UCLA. So they're hitting the road. The offense, while I think it does look improved, it's still kind of sputtering a little bit. Again, USC, they really need this game. This is going to be the best offense as Penn State defense, in my opinion, that they've seen by a good amount to this point this year. I like USC to bounce back and get a big home win on Saturday. So give me the Trojans plus 4.5.
I just, for me, trusting USC, it's like just when you think they're good, they're bad. So maybe that's it. Just when you think they're good, they're bad. And then when they're bad, they're good.
It's a big game for Lincoln Riley. It's a big game. After losing those 2 on the road, all the goodwill from that LSU win is starting to dissolve. They'll become irrelevant really in their fans' eyes if they lose another game. This is a big moment for them. And if they win this, I think the schedule sets up for them to go on a run here after this. So they could go on a run if they could get this win. So it's a huge game. In USC, that was one of our win total overs. That's going to be a trend in the column this week, I have a feeling. We're just going to lean with some of our win total overs, and USC was one of them. And it's a big spot. I think you see them bounce back. I think you see them play one of their better games of the season on Saturday.
Speaking of win total over-unders, this didn't make my selections, but the UK Vandy game, it's going to be in the second half, and I'm going to look down at my phone. I'm going to say, screw it. Every man a Wildcat. I'm probably going to end up taking Colorado to not cover against Kansas State. Kansas State, they bit me once on the road, but it's more of a, hey, I'm fading them because everybody thinks their defense is good because they stop UCF. UCF is just, Gus at UCF is, you can't use them as a barometer, a measuring stick at all. So that's why I'm probably going to end up playing K-State as a short favorite in the late night window. But that game is fascinating in that you've got the one team who is sound and just does everything, quote unquote, the right way versus a program that doesn't operate like a real program. But they score a lot of points. They got superstars. That's big for our win totals, like it, because I feel really good about it if Kansas State can win that game at Boulder.
Yeah. Now, Colorado 3-0 against the spread as a home dog under Coach Prime. In Kansas State, they're a way different team away from the Little Apple.
That's really just my only big concern there. And if you do get behind early, how much can you trust Avery Johnson to go throw you to keep you into the game? Like you if you're a K-State fan, you don't want to see that. So that's one of those games that absolutely fascinates me. Not an official pick. My official pick is one that I actually made last night on 11 personnel, and I'm tempted to just go ahead and play Kentucky minus the 13.5. I'm just a little, I don't know, I'm a little skittish on the offense. I haven't gotten quite there yet, but Vanderbilt's team total is 14.5 points, and I think this defense is going to come out and just put them in a chokehold. That plus Vandy hasn't, like, they just haven't had turnovers yet. To use Max's line, they're due. They're really due to make a bunch of mistakes. So I'm taking Vanderbilt under 14.5 points. I've done this. I forget which other time this year. I bet it was South Carolina. So I hope this doesn't come back to bite me in the butt again, where I took the opponent's team total under. But it feels like this defense is really going to, if nothing else, at least limit Vanderbilt to kicking field goals. And that's where I'm a little apprehensive on betting Kentucky just to cover the 2-touchdown spread. Is in a limited possession game. Like, how many times does Kentucky settle for field goals instead of score touchdowns? So that's why I'm just leaning here with the Vanderbilt team total under 14.5.
Yeah, I think a good stat to kind of judge what a team does is kind of look at their season average and then what that defense or offense does to or defense does to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, South Carolina game was not a great barometer. Now they scored a defensive touchdown, but that wasn't a great game for Kentucky's defense. I think there's just a reason you could explain it, but just to say that wasn't great. But Georgia and Ole Miss were great performances. Like, South Carolina's a top 25 defense. Ole Miss hung 27 on the road and left some points on the field. Kentucky held that team to 17 points. Held Georgia to 13 points. Georgia scored 30-plus against good defenses, Auburn, Alabama. So, in a weird way, Nick, is Kentucky the best defense Vanderbilt has faced?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I know. Like, I know a lot of people wouldn't believe that on the surface, that if you just said straight up Kentucky's defense is better than Alabama's. But I think there's a real case to be made for that, and I think it's better than Missouri's defense, and I think it's better than Georgia State, and I know it's better than Georgia State, and I know it's better than Virginia Tech. So can you be the first one to really hold this Vanderbilt team under 20 points in regulation? No one has done that yet, but I think style of play could be big in this game because of how both teams want to play. And if any side forces turnovers, that puts the other side, I think, in a tough situation from a scoring aspect. So I mean,
yeah.
if Kentucky's able to force those turnovers, I think, or force a turnover or two, I think there's definitely a very good shot to hold them under that. And the line here is fascinating to me, the spread. Not only is it calling for Kentucky's defense to hold Vandy to a season low,
Yeah.
it's calling for a Kentucky offense who's scoring three offensive touchdowns, or 2 offensive touchdowns, in 3 SEC games. It's calling for them to score up towards 30 points.
Yeah, so I trust Vegas more than I trust all the people who are drinking the Diego Pavia Kool-Aid. I think Kentucky's going to be ready to put the clamps on them. They're going to come out hungry and hit this Vanderbilt offense in the mouth. Got a little bit of extra time. You mentioned it last night on 11 Personnel, the anti-rat poison that they've been feeding them over the last week. I think they'll be ready to play. So I trust the Kentucky defense.
I'll be very, 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 very surprised if we don't see, whether they execute or not, it's a different thing. But if they don't play hard and are ready to go from the jump for Kentucky, that is, I would be very surprised if that's what plays out on Saturday.
Yeah. All right, let's get to your final pick, Mr. Luckett. Who you got?
Yeah, we did 2 big games here, so let's go way off the grid. Syracuse at NC State, taking the home dog. The stinky home dog. +5 here. This is an important game for us. Like you mentioned, Syracuse, we had the under. If they lose this game, the under is pretty safe territory. With 2 ACC losses this early, they still have to play Pitt and some other good teams in that league. That is Syracuse. So NC State win would be huge here, but NC State might be terrible this year. But NC State coming off a really bad loss at home to Wake Forest was probably the first, I would say, bad loss they've had just from a game they should probably win. Again, similar to USC, I think they're backed into a corner here. They need to come out and play well. Like, if they don't win this game, this season could get really ugly, I think, in Raleigh. So I think you'll see one of NC State's best efforts. Syracuse, Nick, is very one-dimensional on offense. Last week, they barely survived at UNLV. Now they got to go to NC State. Different challenge. But I like NC State here. I think they've got a great chance to win outright. So give me the Wolfpack +5. At home, I'm not sure Syracuse is in a position either where they should be laying points against power conference teams on the road, especially more than a field goal. So give me NC State +5.
One other that I'm considering, and we'll see if we pull the trigger or not. It's feeling a little square because it was at 3.5 and now it's in a 2.5, and that's West Virginia as a dog at home. We're in the Matt Campbell zone. And when I just see a 3.5 next to Iowa State, I'm just like, fade, fade, fade. It's the auto fade. I can't believe Iowa State's undefeated and the 11th ranked team in the country. The only hesitancy is, yes, it's a bit of a square pick right now. It's not like one of those most lopsided lines of the week yet. But the other part of me is I took West Virginia earlier as a short home dog, and they really cost me. But that was a big win for them last week at Oklahoma State, who, man, Cowboys, Pokes, high hopes this year, and they are looking bad.
Yeah, every week there's a game. Oh, this is a really big game in the Big 12. Just considering the Big 12 race and the playoff process, I think this is the big one in the conference this week, is Iowa State at West Virginia. Because if Iowa State wins, I think they kind of separate themselves as – they're probably a safe bet to probably get to the conference championship game if they were able to win that game and get off to this 6-0 start.
Mm-hmm.
But if they lose it, it just makes the Chaos Conference more chaotic. It creates a big jumble there in the middle.
And West Virginia would be undefeated still in the Big 12. They'd be a top
conference with two losses, non-con. Yeah.
Yeah. And they weren't losing to Penn State. There's no shame in that. You would think of West Virginia a lot differently if they didn't melt down in the backyard brawl too. So that's part of it for me. So that's another one that I'm considering. So yeah, we've been through most of the big games. Are there any other big games that we missed?
There's a couple games I want to mention here, Nick. It's the Jeff Collins Revenge Bowl, Georgia Tech at North Carolina.
Ooh.
Jeff Collins is North Carolina's defensive coordinator, so that's an interesting angle there. I mentioned this earlier. South Carolina, Bama is really fascinating for both those teams. Obviously, we all know the Bama angle, but the South Carolina angle, the schedule gets tricky. You lose this one, you lose Oklahoma, they could be looking at another 5-7 year. But I also think they've got the defense where they're going to be able to win a game like that if Sellers plays well, and so they're a fascinating team. So that game interests me a little bit. Cincinnati at UCF, loser there. The fan base is probably going to be pretty pissed at their head coach.
Yep.
And what the direction of their program. There's no underselling that UCF performance at Florida last week. Off that Colorado game. I think I haven't dug in to see what the kind of the tone is, but you have to think UCF fans are pretty bitter and upset about that. You get Florida, the best time to play them in the Swamp.
Right.
And you go down there and you look like absolute crap.
You think you have a roster that's just as good, if not better, than what Florida
they
has.
were awful. I watched most of that game. It was awful. They were awful in that game.
They've been bad.
That was a very and then go ahead.
I've just got a question for you. Does the Eastern Michigan as a dog, does that still apply at home in conference play?
I don't have the numbers offhand, but no, we strictly road dog Eastern Michigan.
Road dog it. Okay, so the factory
will not be in the column this week.
Okay, all right. Yeah, if you want to check out the column, by the way, join 50. You get 50% off KSR Plus when you sign up now. So
yeah, and then the other in Louisville at Virginia. Virginia's good enough to beat Louisville if they don't play well. I don't expect them not to play well or to go down there and drop an egg, but that's one to watch. Because Virginia's quietly 4-1, and I wouldn't say they're a good football team, but they're improved. So that's an interesting game. If Louisville loses that, I don't think they will. Things really start to that thing really starts to get off the track. It's one wheel's off the tracks right now, but it's nothing we'll get it fixed here at the service shop. It's not a big deal, but if lose that one, you're going to need a new transmission. It might need the conductor might have to make some changes to the personnel staff.
Did you see how many points John Summerall's Tulane Green Wave scored last weekend?
Yeah, 70. Is that what it
71 points.
Yeah.
Now UAB, they've already played Navy. They lost 41-18. And now they are 25.5-point dogs to Army. It's a lot of points for a military academy to cover, but whew. Trent Dilfer, turns out, not a great hire. Weird how that works.
Shocking. His defensive coordinator was just, to my knowledge, he was just a high school defensive coordinator. It would have been I don't know who the DC is at Manual, but if the DC at Manual was hey, you want to come call plays and the American Athletic Conference.
St. X Manual this weekend, Luckett, big game.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Luckett. I love the St. X Manual series because Manual always plays St. X close and they never win.
I'm pretty sure they beat them in the playoffs last year.
Was that the first time in 70 years? It felt like
they ended that streak. They ended that streak against Wallace, I think, a couple years ago. But yeah, there were some crazy endings in that. Charles Walker. I went to a game when Charles Walker played at X. I think it was his senior year. They had no business winning. Down the whole game, couldn't do anything. St. X is all right, we got to pass it. And saying that's what it was. They won. Yeah. It wasn't necessarily a Hail Mary, but it was
it was an overtime
30-yard pass into the end zone.
Yeah, it was they had a chance and then a 15-yard penalty backed them up, and it was all right, just knock the ball down, Manual, and you win. And my radio boss's son was on that Manual team. That was his last game, was having to lose to St. X on a Hail Mary.
Yeah. See, last year they did beat St. X on a bad PI call. They called PI on a 4th down. It wasn't PI. One of the local stations had the film, and it was like a phantom flag. And then I think Manual scored on the next play or something. But yeah, I think that Manual's gotten a couple wins, I'm pretty sure, since it. But that streak went a long time. It was 30-something games, I think, 30, maybe 40 games.
Well, it's going to be beautiful weather Friday to get out to the football game. It's going to be beautiful weather Saturday. This is also, if you don't go to Kroger Field, I want to see you there. But if you don't go, this is a great multiple TVs on the back porch night. Like that sounds just mwah. So a great slate lies ahead. Hopefully you've got some winners. A quick rundown of what we've got. I got Ohio State -3 against Oregon. Illinois -22.5. Vanderbilt team total under 14.5 points. Luckett slipped away from us, but he's on. I'm pulling it up right now. The Red River under 50.5. USC +4.5, and NC State +5 are Luckett's locks. You can have more of his selections. Find them more on KSR Plus on Friday. Good luck and wager responsibly. This has been the Pigskin Preview.